Good afternoon and welcome to the Legacy Men's podcast here at the Depot at Cornerstone Church. My name is Gary Trevor, your host, my co-host Jason Gonzalez and Ryan Durnan. And this afternoon our guest is Drake Reed, an author of 3 fabulous books and an international basketball player from Europe. Welcome, Drake.
Oh, hello everyone. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate being here.
So glad you can be here.
Hey, thank you all so much for tuning in again here at the Legacy Men's podcast, where we learn how to live and leave a godly legacy. Wanted to thank you all again for sharing this content, for subscribing. Don't forget to click that notification bell because we've got some great episodes coming up, including this one. Drake, thank you very much for joining us. We'll be diving in pretty early on to your childhood, what religion might have looked like in the household, and then just the crazy journey that you went through as a collegiate athlete, traveling internationally. I think you visited somewhere close to 5 countries overseas?
No. I lived in 6 and I've traveled
6.
to 24.
Oh, traveled to
So
24.
yeah,
You're way off.
so you got a fraction right.
Yeah. So buckle up, guys. This is going to be a good time.
It'll be a great time.
And just wanted to quick shout out there to any athletes out there that are tuning in. You do have some books as well. Would you mind highlighting some of the books that you have so far?
So they all 3 have the same title, Christian Athletes versus the World. Volume 1 is out now. Volume 2 will be out next month. And then we plan on having Volume 3 out probably about December.
Right.
So,
And you can find this on Amazon, correct?
yeah, you can find it on Amazon. And if you would like to do bulk orders, just hit us up on our website and we'll send you bulk orders to schools or ministries or whatever you have going on.
All right. Christian Athletes versus the World, available there on Amazon.
On Amazon.
Great title.
So Drake, firstly, thank you for coming. I am so glad you came to join us. I'm so grateful to Adam Gonzalez for tapping us to say, hey, get hold of Drake. He's got the testimony. So start with us, because basically the important thing is your background, your mom, your dad, any siblings you may have possibly. And then bring us to the place that you received Christ, because ultimately, no matter where or what you're from, this is all about bringing you to Christ, which gives you the foundation to drive forward in life. So kind of start us off with your mom and dad, where you were born, and your upbringing by your parents as well.
Well, before I get there, I just want to thank y'all again for having me on, and thank God for just making this whole thing possible. When it comes to my childhood, I was born and raised in St. Louis, Missouri. By way of Clarksville, Tennessee, I moved there when I was 14. I have one older brother, no sisters, so I'm the baby, and my parents been married for about 45 years now.
That's awesome.
And so I grew up we had 3 different situations. So we started off in a normal sized home, then moved into a better neighborhood about 5 years later, and then moved into a better neighborhood about 5 years later. So I was fortunate enough to be in a family, to see 2 people working together cohesively, and then working together and building a better life for their children over a period of time. So it was great. Went from like a normal neighborhood to like an upper middle class type of neighborhood. And most kids had both parents at home. Most people went to church or they had some type of religious affiliation. And so I started going to church a little bit when I was like in maybe like end of elementary-ish. But we didn't go too consistently. We went every once in a while. And then I think my parents experienced a bit of church hurt, and that stopped us from going for a while. And I ended up finding Christ when I got to college. When I got to college, when I got baptized and started going consistently.
How was that experience for you? Describe for athletes right now who are obviously watching and listening. How did you come to Christ? What was the draw by Christ to bring you into that realization you can't move forward without Christ in your life?
Well, I think God knows the type of person I am, so He kind of scared the crap out of me.
Explain that to us.
I'm kind of a very stubborn person. Anybody that knows me knows I'm pretty stubborn. So to get me to do something that I feel like is out of the ordinary or it can be challenging. So in any case, I just had this crazy dream one evening. I think I was probably 19 or 20 years old. And when I woke up from this dream, it just seemed like the dream was continuing as I was awake, and it just really scared me. And I called called my best friend at the time, and he was like, I was explaining it to him. He said, "Man, you should go to church, man, with me, man. I go to church right up the street." And when I looked it up, it was really within walking distance, 2 or 3 blocks from where I was staying in college. And so it was crazy because here we were best friends since like high school, and I didn't even know he went to that church. So it tells you the type of stuff we were talking about. But that was my it was spot on because I was coming off being a player of the year in my conference as a sophomore, going into my junior year, and my junior year would end up being the most challenging year of my college career. So it was like God got me right at the right time.
Yeah. What was
Amen.
the, nightmare or dream or like? Can you
Yeah,
walk us through
it
what's
was
going on?
nightmare, man. It was like somebody was telling me like I had a different name and all this crazy stuff, and it was flashed me through all these different situations, and I was acting crazy, and I woke up and was like, man, that was a pretty wild dream.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then I could just like sense that something was around me in my room, and it was pretty wild, man.
Yeah.
And I felt that whole presence like the whole week. So
Yeah.
it was pretty scary, man. I never experienced anything, that powerful up until that point. But when I look back on it, you don't know anything about blessing the house and who stayed in there before
Amen.
who got there and those
Yeah.
sorts of things. So those are things that I learned later, much later, like after my career was over later, coming to an end later. That's some of the main things I go over in my books is like, you need to, when you're away from your family, it's one thing if your mom and dad's down at the end of the hallway and something happens and then they can help
It's a
you with
great
it.
point.
But it's another when you're on your own and you haven't been trained in this area and then these sorts of things are going on. Because if you stand in an apartment complex, it's probably a lot of spiritual things going on that you're unaware of.
Yeah, and this is, I mean, we've talked about on this show before too about spiritual warfare. And I mean, it's just real. It's just
Yeah.
I mean, we can look at all just the things that we want to talk about that glorifies God and Jesus and all that, and that's very healthy. But also the armor of God
Yeah.
is made up. I mean, that is in Scripture for a reason because there
Amen.
are principalities and darkness in this world that unbeknowingly sometimes we'll have those and we'll like not be able to sense what that is, but not really what I like about what happened to you. But I think from you describing that, us talking about just kind of your identity in Christ now, right? That was almost the first spiritual attack on your identity, showing you almost kind of like you're going to be called a different name. You're going to be a different person. You're
Yeah.
not going to be able to select or choose who you are. And God was the one that sewed you in the womb. I mean, he knew you already. And so it was almost like this battle that you were feeling that friend was just right there, right? To just put a spear in it and be like, you can go to church 2 blocks away.
Well, it's interesting because the things you need are always right around you. It's just, are you
Yeah, good
aware
point.
of what you need, and are you tapping into that? And I remember I think that whole dream was the catalyst up for it was I was playing a video game, and in this video game I was just shooting and doing shooting these little alien characters, and they kept saying heretic, heretic, he's a heretic, he's a heretic, and it just something about that just struck my mind. I was like, man, what is that? And then so thinking about that goes
Interesting.
into this crazy dream.
Yeah.
And so something in this dream was like, well, you're a heretic and you did da 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 da. And I'm like, man. So in any case, this was a crazy dream. And one thing I look at now, especially now that I'm working with the youth a lot, is you got to pay attention to these video games these kids are playing.
Yep.
You have to pay attention to the music and these things because what also happens is there's a lot of characters in these games that they're using that are actually demonic beings, and I didn't realize that till I started traveling the world. It's like, wait a minute, this is the character on this video game, but
Yeah.
they're actually worshiping this being somewhere else. So
Okay.
so yeah, you see those type of things, and what happens is that relationship that you're developing without subconsciously with something that's not of God is really starting at a very young age.
Yeah. And then, so when you went to church, what was the experience there? Because I know you said I mean, for that week,
Yeah.
you were experiencing some things, but what?
Well, it was great because that was the first year I really was facing a lot of scrutiny. Like I told you, I was coming off, a really good season, being a player of the year in my conference, pretty much figuring I was on the fast track to be an NBA player and be one of the next guys from my university to have an opportunity. And this was the year where like all the scrutiny started to come in. So you go from being like the golden boy, everyone's loving you and all these sorts of things, and then now, well, one of the things that made me stop watching, TV is Now I'm watching the news channel and they talking about how overrated I am.
Yeah.
So it was like, dang, man, it was hard to deal with at 20 years old because I hadn't experienced that visceral of a sort of thing at that point. So I always tell kids, don't get too high on your own press clippings, because there is the other side of it. But that was the perfect time for me to go to church because now. Now I could get rid of some of that pride, and as those visceral attacks from people were starting to come, I could deal with that a lot better.
Yeah, and I mean that's just reality for a lot of people growing up right now too, right? I love how you're working with the community of kids, right? Because it's unprecedented what the reality of the influence that kids have on each other nowadays with social media and all these things, and there's just a loss of identity.
Yeah.
Is the reality, right? It's like maybe not like from the sports perspective too, right? Is that doesn't really shut off, and they read this stuff, and then they recreate this image of who they are, and they have this identity crisis. It's like overrated.
Well,
It's like, wow.
the main thing is now you're not separated from anything. So
Yeah.
if something's going on in India and you're 13 years old, you know about it because it's in the shows that you watch. If something's going on in China or Russia or Brazil or whatever, you're not hidden from those things as long as it's the same language as yours. It's going to pop up, and it's just a matter of your interest. The algorithms are going to pop up, and you might click on it. And that's not just for kids, that's for adults as well. So
Yeah.
it's just as many people that are getting confused and bamboozled that are grown people as well as young people. So what it does is it's hard to control that box that your kid is in. So now, yeah, you might live in this neighborhood and go to this school, but you're really not even paying attention to your neighborhood or this school because of what you're watching and what you're giving your attention to every day.
Yeah.
To whereas when we were kids, it's like, hey, you just pretty much had your neighborhood and that was your world.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
how
definitely.
important, I know you had a couple of leaders, a couple of mentors in your life, your dad being the first one. How important was it for you to find those mentors your sophomore and junior year, and what effect did it have on you moving forward?
Well, I mean, having your dad at home is like the biggest bonus that you could possibly have, man. I mean, and even the rough years when he's hard on you and making you feel like you're not as tough and all that type of stuff. What it does is you look back on those things and it's like, hey, you needed to hear that and be uncomfortable. So him being my first mentor was phenomenal. Then my older brother, right behind him, who was also a blessing because he's 6 years older than me. So he was able to prepare me for high school, prepare me for college, and those sorts of things because he also played college football. And so he really was able to explain to me that well, this is what's going to happen at this level, this is what's going to happen at that level, so on and so forth. But what ends up happening for a lot of athletes, especially if you're a professional caliber type player, is you get to a point where the people around you, although they love you and they mean well, they can't get through. Through to you the same because you kind of are at the point where you're surpassing the things that they've accomplished. And so it's confusing for them, and sometimes they might think that you're being rude to them or whatever. But you really need a professional athlete or a former pro or something like that if that's what you're looking to pursue. No different than a kid that's maybe wanting to be an engineer or a scientist or something. You need someone that's 40 or 50 years old that's in that field to explain it to you because that's what they do. So when I was fortunate enough to meet Xavier McDaniel at a basketball tournament, his daughter was playing when I was, I think I was maybe a junior going into my senior year of college, and I was able to meet Ryan Howard, who played for the Philadelphia Phillies, also that summer. And meeting them two at that particular time, my brother used to tell me, he said, if you see a pro athlete, just go up and talk to them, explain who you are and stuff, and some of them will help you. And so I tried that with a few other guys, and they thought I was just like some groupie or something. But those two guys were able to see that I was like them, just looking to get some advice and get better. And they just really moved mountains for me my senior year of college and my first few years professionally because they had already been through what I had been through. So just everything from teaching me how to be a great leader to how to communicate with guys and things like that, it just took me to another level.
Yeah,
Definitely.
you talked about people management skills. I think one of the things too is that walk us through when you were 14
You read my mind. You read my mind.
and you told your parents I'm out. Like I'm switching schools. I'm doing this.
Yeah.
Your brother was I think at a D1 school playing football, if I'm
Yeah.
not mistaken.
Yeah, so my brother was playing college football at Austin P, and where I also graduated from as well years later. And he was coming home to visit, and I was going to Chaminade High School in St. Louis, Missouri, and I just wasn't getting any playing time at all. Like everyone in Tennessee, nobody really believes me when I say this story, and most people that saw how I finished my career don't believe it. But I wasn't like big and strong back then. I was very skilled, and I was a good player, but I wasn't what I was going to become
This
naturally.
is like an elite school, though. So for listeners that aren't from there, I mean, I think you mentioned some of the names of people that.
Yeah, Chaminade High School. I mean, they put out great players, several NBA players. They send out a lot of D1 players all the time. So that's what I was
I think you
looking to
mentioned
be a
like
part.
Jason Tatum was in this.
Yeah,
district
yeah.
area.
Tatum went there, Bill went there, David Lee went there. So I mean, it's a powerhouse,
Yeah.
and it seemed like it's always going to be that way. So you have Chaminade, you have CBC, you have a lot of good schools in St. Louis, man. Cardinal Ritter, Vashon, So I grew up watching these type of teams, and that's what I was planning on being like. Man, I want to be like these guys, So it was not working out for me at that school, and so my brother came home and visited one time, and he was really upset about it. And my father was going back and forth to Arkansas because he had bought a car dealership and was planning on us migrating there. But in any case, my brother's like, you guys should let him come with me. And they thought he was nuts, because here he was, a college kid, and I was 14, So like most parents, they're like, no, y'all are kids, and like, are you crazy type of deal. But things kept getting progressively worse, and I started getting into depression and those sorts of things, and I could overhear my parents talking about it one night, and I just walked straight in their room, and it's like that moment where it's like, man, I had to really, it was a risk, because parents back then, they cuss you out, that type of stuff. But I said, hey, I can't stay here. If I stay here, nothing's going to happen for me. I'm going to Tennessee with my brother, and I'm gonna go to college. I'm gonna be a pro. And I walked out, and I don't even know what their facial expressions look like because I just walked out and turned my back. And so a couple days later, we were on our way to Tennessee, and we were going through the whole process of.
This is your mom.
Yeah,
Your
my mom
drove you.
Yeah, my mom drove me, and she was real worried about it because it's like, man, what's gonna happen to my baby while he's not with me, and my dad will call me like every 5 minutes and stuff because it's just something that most people don't think that they will have to experience, which is why I always tell parents is when you're great at something, I don't care if it's sports, if you're some type of singer, a musician, or whatever, you typically leaving home at 14, 16, 18 is the normal age, but it's a lot of people when I became a pro, half the team was from another country or something, and they left home when they was like in middle school or in high school as well. So it's actually quite normal in the sports realm. Yeah. So yeah, that was really when my life began.
Yeah, and your mom, I just wanted to give this depiction of what was going on, so because it was a drive, right? So she's sitting there looking at you in the back seat.
No, I was sitting next to her, and she just she's driving and it's raining and she's just like. Like, is this the right thing? And so eventually I stopped even looking in her direction. I didn't want to give her any ammunition that I wanted to turn around. And but yeah, it was tough, because my parents were still coming up there. Still were up there all the time. I had my brother was like the guardian and stuff, and so it was a challenge. Then when I get to Clarksville, I'm going to Clarksville Academy at the time, and then my head coach resigns. So after about a month and a half of me being there, so I started to take off, and then it's like, dang, now I'm in another messed up situation. But I was already zoned for Northeast High School where I graduated, and so when I went there, it was like when the first day of school, I was like, I knew. I said, this is where I'm gonna graduate from. Yeah. And I ended up being the receiver of the year in football, my junior year, and I stopped playing football my senior year because I to pursue basketball full time, and I ended up being an all-state player in basketball and an MVP at a state all-star game.
Yeah, we're talking varsity on both sides too.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. So so it was just from where I started and just have a family that was willing to do that, because now, especially as a coach and training young kids, it's like so many kids don't make it because their family's not willing to do those things. Right. And it doesn't make them wrong, because you're still a kid and you still do dumb stuff and things like that. But it's so much competition. A lot of people have to make a dramatic decision like that.
Where was church along in this?
We went to church sparingly in high school. I went a few times, sometimes when I was like a junior or senior, but it was not like my family was like diehard Christians and stuff. Actually, my grandmother on my mother's side was a pastor, but we didn't grow up in Detroit. My parents and my brother were all born in Detroit, so I was the only one not born in Detroit. So it was I would see my family and stuff in the summer, like my extended family, but that was it.
So Drake, walk us through then. You wanted to be the NBA. That didn't materialize for some reason, which you can explain to us. So then you decided to reach out, and then how did you reach out? And then talk to us about your international experience as a professional player of basketball. Starting, I think you went to Israel, had an initial contract. Walk us through. Then you went to Finland, and you finally came back to France. So kind of run us through the sequence
And
of
Australia.
those.
So it was
Australia.
Australia.
It was a lot of
Australia.
stuff. Yeah, I probably had the most tumultuous start to a basketball professional career as you can imagine. So here I am coming off averaging 22 points, 8 rebounds, having a really successful college career, been to the tournament, been to the NIT, held a lot of the records and stuff. So I'm thinking my resume stacks up against most of the guys that are coming out. I didn't get invited to the Portsmouth invitation. I didn't get invited to the pre-draft camp. And you're looking at guys that's like averaging like half of what I did, and it's like, wow, these guys are on average teams and putting up average numbers and stuff. So it's like you start to understand the politics of the sport from a young age to where, it's just tough because what happens is you get emotional and instead of really understanding the business. But in any case, I signed to play in Afula, Israel for Hapoel Afula. And right out of college, and they just never brought me over. So he's like, when is the ticket coming? When is the ticket coming? Everyone's flying and stuff, and so you're like, what's going on here? So then they end up not bringing me over. So that was a tough blow. So then I signed with Bayern Munich, who was in the second division at the time, looking to move up, and now Bayern Munich, is one of the top teams, every year in Europe. And so they were really at that point where they were building towards that. And I think they accomplished that either that year or the year after that. So I was looking to be like, okay, let me get with this team and move up. But in any case, when I signed the contract to play with them, they fired their coach like 2 or 3 days later. So then the new coach is like, he doesn't want any new players. So I'm thinking from my American mentality, how do you sign somebody and then you don't bring them over, and then it's just like it's a trip, So in any case, I'm introduced how the overseas game can be right up front, and it's embarrassing too because here I am, I'm this great college player going to be a professional, and it's like things are just not happening the way I planned, or that made sense to me. So it took some more months because at this point the free agency was pretty much closed. Everyone spent all their money, so the seasons are starting, and I ended up getting the opportunity to go to Finland, which is like I would say it's like a startup league. So like a startup league, meaning like most guys go there, you have a good season or two, and then you go to a bigger league, So in any case, I signed with the team there, and I get there, and basically everything the coach told me wasn't in their plans. So they had like another guy competing with me for the same position. So they can have 3 Americans on the team then, but they had 5 Americans coming in for 3 spots. And so, which, if it's a competition, it's a competition. But, if you're going to tell me it's going to be this way when I show up, then I expect it to be that way when I show up. So ended up not making that team, and which was another blow. And it was just grimy, it was like, man, how do I even, be a pro? I'll be on this level. So I ended up signing to go play in Australia in the Cebu League, and that was my first start as a professional. So all of this is happening within 6 to 8 months.
Wow, wow. And then this is when in college as a junior, you had started to go to church, get Christ in your life, and I know you said that this is a good reason why at that specific time you needed to have that in your life. How was that journey with having Christ in your life?
Well, having Christ in my life at that point is probably the only thing that kept me sane. But even at the same time, when people start complaining about, when things are going wrong in their life, those questions pop up. It's like, well, God, I'm a good kid, I don't do drugs. I haven't been in trouble with the law. I haven't been drinking or smoking or nothing like that. And so it's like, why are these other guys getting opportunities and I'm not, so you start to go through that because you're young, and that's how most people were going to think. But I didn't know anything about like your calling and certain things happen for certain years. I didn't understand that because I was still very much a baby Christian. I didn't grow up in the church and was in the church from like age 6 on up or 13 and on up. So and then you also don't get the tutelage and things when you're in college or as a professional as you would as a normal person, because the time that you're at practice and games is just basically the time that they're having Bible study and those sorts of things. So there's so much that I didn't get,
Yeah.
So I think one of the things we want to bring full circle then. So you went to, tell us about, you went to how many countries, and then how many places you actually stay at, and then bring us, because time is rolling up for us, bring us then full circle back to the United States then, what you're now currently doing, as Jason alluded to, that is now benefiting us here in America from the skills that you have and have developed.
Ooh. Oh man, if I go through countries, so I played the longest in France, so I'm going to mention the countries I actually lived in.
Right.
So France, Italy, Austria, the one in Europe, and then Australia, Libya, and Argentina. Okay. I've also played in tournaments in Tunisia. I played on the national team in Mali, Croatia, Hungary. I think that might be, so maybe like 10 who I actually played basketball in. And then you visit in places all, constantly, because it's super cheap to travel when you're in Europe or Africa. So I was like, well, let me see a bunch of the world while I can,
Right.
But I ended up coming back to the States during the COVID year.
Okay. And I think one of the elements that you brought up to us as well is that, unlike here in the States, you have so many churches around and so many Christians, and people are very bold.
Yeah.
Unlike Europe and everything else, that's not as prevalent. So if you, as Jason alluded to, had you not had Christ in your life, you would have had a real struggle within all the travels you'd been to, because Christ is just not a dominant thing, a dominant feature as it is in the United States.
Well, in Europe there are churches. It's just mostly just Catholic dominated, or they speak a language that you don't understand, or maybe they're like Orthodox or something, that where it's not like when you go to Cornerstone and you go in here and they have like it's laid out and everyone's excited. It's not the same type of environment. They don't have it like how we do it at home. So what happens is the language barrier becomes a thing, and then a lot of the people don't believe in it. So even though you might be on the team, I don't remember anybody that was like a Catholic on any of my teams. I don't remember anybody that was a Christian on any of my teams in any of the countries, with the exception of when I was in Australia.
Right.
So Australia was fine. I could go to churches just like you have here. But when I got to Europe, it was very challenging. What happens over time is you just stop looking, and then for a time I lost my way, because you're not connected to the vine. So when you're not connected to the vine, you're out there in the world and things hitting you, and there's a lot of stuff pulling on you, and you start to see. I really was confronted with just the realities of how other countries are compared to us. We complain a lot about our country. We say a lot of negative things about our country. But you ain't been nowhere, man, where you seen like 50 or 60 kids on a regular basis that are homeless, that are 3 or 4 years old, and nobody's watching them, and they're running through the streets and crossing the street, almost getting hit by cars. You've never seen anything like that. You've never been places where there's no clean water, or you have to like go places to get toilet paper and stuff because people don't have it in their house. It's just stuff that you just could have never imagined. You see people driving motorcycles or scooters and stuff with their toddlers in their hand, and you're like, how can you ride around with a 1-year-old or a 2-year-old in your arm, like a loaf of bread on the highway,
Yeah.
So it's just stuff that I remember seeing a little girl on the second level of her house, kicking her legs off the side of her house because the side of her house was blown off. You could see everyone, our family and stuff in the kitchen. So it's just stuff, and we're on our way to practice, So you seeing this stuff coming from our country, where we have a lot more privilege and things like that. And then it's like, man, I got to block out what I just saw, and I got to go practice and practice good, or they're gonna cut me out and go home.
Yeah.
So it's just the way. It's a much different ball game.
So you brought this to the United States, and so currently, what do you do? I know you're an author of nearly 3 books. So what are you actually doing here in Arizona to bring your skills to the young people then?
Well, I'm training players. I'm a skills coach over at First Institutional Baptist Church, and I also am starting up some Zoom classes, as well as classes to teach the curriculum from these books. because it's basically, it doesn't matter about if you're going overseas or if you're in the States or whatever. It's going to prepare you for whatever situation you're going to be going through as an athlete. And it doesn't matter the sport. You know, there's certain things you need to know before you leave your family.
Amen.
So that when your family, takes you to the airport or drops you off at, a college or at a prep school or even as a professional, there's certain things you need to know about yourself, certain things you need to know about God, maybe your gifting and those sorts of things, so that when you're out here, you're not just totally confused and you don't have any wits about you. Because even though you might be a Christian and you went to church and all these things, you're not bombarded by the same. When you're an athlete, you're so much more visible than the average person. Like you can't hide anywhere. Here I'm 6'4", 6'5", 230 pounds. Like, who am I gonna hide behind? Who am I gonna blend in with? I'm not 5'8", something like that. And you're on TV all the time. You're on the social media all the time, and people are looking for you. So you can't do anything. You can't even thump a booger without somebody recording it, and posting it on the internet, making a meme of it. So with that being said, there's much more opposition coming your direction. When you do something that's wrong or unsavory or someone thinks is immoral, the whole community knows.
Yep.
So you go to the grocery store, people give you a hard time. You go pump gas, people give you a hard time. So what do? You stop going. Or you go there and you develop this mindset that you don't care. And even though people say they don't care, what happens is you become desensitized over time to where you don't care for real. And then that can kind of put you at odds with people as well, because you don't respond to issues the same way as anyone else does. So it can create a lot of barriers of loneliness and these sorts of things that the athletes endure as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right. Christian Athletes versus the World is a great title. What drew you to start writing on that subject? Like, what was the thing that made you start writing about that?
Well, I think for me, I spent most of my young adult life lost, and I had no intentions on writing any of these books, honestly. I was talking to my spiritual mother, who was an evangelist, and she also has a prophetic gifting. And we were talking about something completely different one day, and I was just moving back to the States and getting settled here in Phoenix. And she just said, "You're gonna write a book." And I was like, "No, I'm not." I was dead serious. I have no intention on writing nothing. I'm just cool with, getting my life settled here and beginning my life in the States. And she said, "No, you have to, because of the things you experience. It's going to help a lot of people." So I was like, that was in one ear out the other, and I tuned that out for about 6 months, and I was at one of the Life Surge events, thinking it was a concert, and I was like, why Naomi Rain only sang like 2 songs? But she was just there for the praise and worship, I guess. And so some people came up and started talking about their businesses and their testimonies and things, and that's what brought into remembrance that the best thing that one guy, he came up, he said, you have to think about the thing that you do better than anyone else in the world, and that's what you need to go with your business. And that's what brought into the remembrance this book. And so about a month later, I finally had some time to write. And it's like the Holy Spirit was just pumping through me, man. I mean, I was typing 2,000 to 4,000 words a day for about 5 or 6 weeks, and then the book was done. And then it was about getting the team around the book, the manager, and interviewing pastors and things.
Awesome. Well, Drake, thank you so much for joining us. Just wanted to thank y'all again for joining us here at the Legacy Men's Podcast, where we learn how to live and leave a godly legacy. Wanted to throw out there as well, as I was speaking to you, Drake, and I'm excited to pick this book up and start it, is that I think most men have this competitive, natural, innate quality to them, right? Mm-hmm. And so even if you're not an athlete, I'd still suggest reading this.
Yeah, I would.
As a Marine myself, I know you've served as well, law enforcement, military. I think you played as well growing up.
I was raised by professional athletes, so that's...
So, I mean, I think that this book just correlates to a lot of what's inside of us competitively and how we go about aligning that spiritually. So please make sure you check this book out. And I just wanted to thank you again for joining us, Drake.
Well, thanks for having me, fellas, and I appreciate it, and hope to see you all again soon.
You betcha. Great book.
Thank you.
Great book. Thank you, Drake.